1,200 feet of icy cold Lake Superior water, but several people have made the voyage to this dangerous location to view the most famous of Great Lakes shipwrecks.
46 years later, we finally learned why no bodies from the Edmund Fitzgerald shipwreck were ever found. The tragic sinking in 1975 remains a mystery, with all crew members disappearing without a trace. The ship, a marvel of engineering, sailed into Lake Superior's dangerous waters on a cold November day, but wasn't prepared for the fierce storm ahead. Why, after all these years, does the lake still keep the secrets of the lost crew, never revealing where their bodies lie? Let's step into the mystery of this silent and forgotten tragedy, the tragic sinking. The story began on a cold November day in 1975. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald was one of the largest ships on the Great Lakes, and a great example of engineering at that time. But even with its size and strength, it couldn't withstand the rough waters of Lake Superior. Captain Ernest McSorley, a sailor with more than 40 years of experience, set out with his crew of 29 men. They were carrying 26,000 tons of iron ore pellets to a steel mill near Detroit. The trip started off normally, but as they approached the eastern side, a dangerous storm began to form. As the storm grew, the captain reported worsening conditions. These were the last words anyone heard from the ship before it vanished. What happened in those final moments remains a mystery, leaving many to wonder what secrets lie beneath the waves. Some called it a once-in-a-lifetime storm. It brought strong winds, giant waves, and freezing temperatures. Captain McSorley, however, trusted his ship and crew to make it through. The ship had survived tough storms before, and he believed they could handle the lake's fury. But as the storm got worse, so did the ship's situation. There were reports of leaks, the radar wasn't working right, and the lifeboats were damaged. Despite all these problems, his final radio message at 7:10 p.m. on November 10th sounded calm. "We are holding our own." Just minutes later, the ship vanished from radar, sinking into the lake and leaving behind many unanswered questions and grief. Many theories have tried to explain why the ship sank, from problems with its structure to human error, but no one knows for sure. The mystery of the ship continues to capture the public's imagination, leading to books, songs, and documentaries. But this wasn't the worst part. The sinking didn't just show the dangers of the sea. It also showed how strong the human spirit is when facing nature's biggest challenges. In the cold, deep waters, temperatures drop close to freezing, especially in its deepest areas. This happens because the lake is so big that it takes a long time to warm up, even in the summer. Far below, where sunlight can't reach, the water stays cold all year round. These extreme temperatures are dangerous for both people and the creatures living in the lake. People exposed to the cold water can quickly suffer from hypothermia, making it almost impossible to survive if they stay in the water for too long. The powerful storms that hit, combined with its great depth, make it very difficult to carry out recovery missions. When the wreck was found, it was thanks to sonar technology, but the cold and the depth made it very hard to recover any bodies or investigate the accident further. The dark, icy waters are dangerous for divers, and even advanced underwater vehicles struggle with the intense pressure at such depths. But the challenges don't stop there. Its huge size and depth also mean that it takes almost 200 years for all the water in the lake to fully cycle through. This slow movement affects how nutrients and pollutants spread, often leaving the deeper waters isolated from what happens at the surface. The cold, heavy water at the bottom stays separate from the warmer water near the top, creating layers that don't mix easily. The deep waters hint at many mysteries, including hidden features and possibly unknown creatures living in its murky depths. This massive lake has also played a big role in human history, serving as an important route for centuries. Native Americans were the first to travel its waters, followed by European explorers, and later it became a busy path for commercial shipping. Experts think that the violent sinking, worsened by a powerful storm, might have trapped the crew inside the ship. Evidence suggests that the front of the ship was deeply buried in the lake's bottom, which points to a hard impact that likely blocked any escape routes. Another theory is that the crew, weakened by the freezing cold, was swept away by the strong currents, with their bodies sinking to the bottom and possibly getting tangled in the wreckage. The currents are incredibly strong, sometimes reaching up to 3 knots in certain areas. It's very possible that the crew had no chance of escaping and were pulled away, lost forever in the vast depths. Even with today's advanced technology, it's still extremely difficult to explore the deepest parts, as they are covered in layers of silt and debris, making it nearly impossible to recover remains. And this wasn't the worst part. These depths are also home to countless shipwrecks, each with its own sad story. The ship is just one of many that have met their end in the dangerous waters of the Great Lakes. It's a constant reminder of how unpredictable and deadly the lake can be. Perhaps the cold, dark waters hold on to their secrets tightly, refusing to let go of the souls lost in the tragedy. The lake's reputation for being unforgiving and dangerous is well-deserved, and its deep waters continue to stir both fascination and sadness. On top of its tragic place in history, the sinking led to important changes in shipping regulations and safety. Investigations and studies followed the disaster, aiming to understand what went wrong and prevent future tragedies, shaping the way maritime safety is handled today. The U.S. Coast Guard, the National Transportation Safety Board, and the Lake Carriers Association all carried out thorough investigations, but no clear reason for the sinking was ever found. The uncertainty surrounding the sinking has led to many theories and guesses, including ideas about possible problems with the ship, mistakes by the crew, and harsh weather conditions. Despite all the investigations and efforts to figure it out, the true cause of the disaster is still unknown. The story of the ship continues to grab our attention and reminds us how powerful and dangerous the lake can be. As we leave behind the chilling tale, we venture into the subsequent shifts in maritime protocols and safety measures that arose from this disaster. Tragedy and tribute. In recent years, there have been efforts to remember and honor the Edmund Fitzgerald and its crew. A monument stands in Whitefish Bay, Michigan, and every year a ceremony is held there to remember the lost sailors. The event includes laying wreaths and a moment of silence to honor those who died. The story of the ship has also been kept alive in cultural works, like the song "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald" by Gordon Lightfoot. The song tells a sorrowful story of the crew and their families and has become a famous piece of Canadian folk music. Additionally, many books and documentaries have examined the tragedy, offering detailed views on what happened in its aftermath. These works highlight the importance of understanding how dangerous the sea can be. The loss of the ship's crew remains a sad and mysterious chapter in history. No bodies were ever found, and the terrible storm and the strong currents in the lake have turned this event into a lasting tragedy surrounded by uncertainty. The deep waters of Lake Superior hold on to their secrets, never revealing what really happened to the men of the ship. But the mystery wasn't even the worst part. 2 decades after the tragic sinking, something unexpected was discovered, adding even more mystery to the disaster story. This discovery only deepened the fascination with what really happened and made the event even more significant in maritime history. On July 4, 1995, a group of adventurers led by Canadian Dr. Joseph McInnes set off on an expedition to find the wreck. Dr. McInnes was well known for his deep-sea explorations, and this journey had been in the works for quite some time. The team used the latest sonar technology and underwater vehicles to track down the ship. After several days of searching, they finally found it. The ship was resting about 530 feet underwater, roughly 17 miles northwest of Whitefish Bay, Michigan. When the team began exploring the wreck, they came across something unexpected. The crew's bodies were still surprisingly intact, preserved by the cold water. It was a haunting scene. Some crew members were still in their uniforms, seated in the dining area or lying in their bunks, while others were found on the deck. The freezing temperatures and the low oxygen levels at that depth had slowed down the process of decay, keeping the bodies well preserved. This discovery brought a mix of emotions: sadness, respect, and closure. For the families of the crew, who had spent 20 years wondering what happened to their loved ones, this find provided some long-awaited answers. The explorers took great care to document everything they found, making sure not to disturb the bodies out of respect for both the deceased crew and their grieving families. But this wasn't the end of the story. The recovery of the bodies reopened old questions about how the ship had sunk. Investigators started revisiting different theories, like whether the ship's structure had failed or if a massive wave had caused the disaster. As the news spread, public interest grew once again. Documentaries, books, and articles were produced, offering fresh perspectives on the ship's tragic end. The discovery made headlines in newspapers, magazines, and TV stations across the country. For the families who had been waiting for answers for 2 decades, seeing the ship and their loved ones gave them a sense of peace. Finally, they knew where their relatives were, and it brought some closure. This find also reminded everyone of the risks that sailors take when navigating the Great Lakes, leading to renewed calls for better safety measures and responsibility in the shipping industry. But even then, there was more to take away from this tragedy. Over time, the story became a symbol of remembrance. It was not just about the shipwreck. It became a lasting tribute to those who lost their lives at sea, ensuring their legacy would never be forgotten. The story has become part of popular culture, inspiring many books, documentaries, and movies. When Joseph McInnes and his team of explorers discovered the wreck, they found a haunting scene. The cold water of the lake slows down the decay of anything that sinks, which means bodies that end up on the lake bed could stay there for a very long time, never floating to the surface. In warmer waters, bodies often rise due to the gases that form, but in Lake Superior, the cold keeps them submerged, weighed down by their water-soaked clothing. The storm that sank the ship was massive, with waves as tall as 35 feet. If any remains had floated up, they were likely pulled back down by the lake, disappearing forever into its depths. This makes you wonder, how many ships and lives has it claimed, leaving no evidence behind? Lake Superior has rightly earned its dangerous reputation. Beneath its surface, countless shipwrecks rest, each with its own tragic story. The lake's waters stay cold year-round, rarely going above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, even in the summer, making it especially tough for anyone who falls in. But here's something even more unsettling. The pressure deep in the lake stops air from forming in bodies, so even those that manage to rise are quickly pulled back down by the weight of the water. The storm that sank the ship is a perfect example of just how unpredictable it can be, showing that even well-prepared crews can fall victim to its power. With every year that passes, the story continues to grow, becoming a part of the shared memory of those who hear about it. Its tale serves as a reminder of the lake's strength and the lives lost in its waters. The crew were experienced sailors, each with their own story and reasons for being on the ship. They had dedicated their lives to the hard work of sailing on it, which sadly cost them everything. It is known for being dangerous, often claiming ships and their crews without warning. The sinking is a clear example of how powerful and unpredictable it can be. As we learn more about this tragedy, we're reminded of the great risks sailors take and the importance of respecting the dangers of life at sea. As the waves of history ripple forward, the saga of the Edmund Fitzgerald serves as a bridge to our next chapter, exploring the broader impacts of maritime disasters, unraveling the mysteries. After the disaster, many investigations were started to figure out what caused the ship to sink. Groups like the U.S. Coast Guard, the National Transportation Safety Board, and the Lake Carriers Association looked into it. But even after all their efforts, no one could come up with a solid reason for the sinking. This has led to many theories, from problems with the ship's structure and human mistakes to the extreme weather on that day. The sinking of Edmund Fitzgerald didn't just leave a mark on music and literature, it also led to big changes in maritime safety rules. These new regulations were designed to help prevent future tragedies. But we can't help but ask, how many more ships and sailors has a Lake Superior taken, leaving them lost forever in its depths? On November 10, 1975, it sank, and all 29 crew members lost their lives. Their families were deeply affected, especially since their loved ones' bodies were never found. This made the loss even harder to deal with, leaving the families in a state of ongoing pain and confusion. Funerals were held, but without the bodies, the mourning process didn't feel complete. The rituals that are supposed to bring comfort were missing something important. But that wasn't the worst part. The families were left with a sense of emptiness and continued heartache. The ship wasn't just lost, it was a symbol of the lives that were taken, with no clear answers about what happened. Although new safety measures were put in place after the sinking, it didn't make things easier for the families who still had so many unanswered questions. As they searched for closure, the families had to accept the reality of moving forward without the traditional goodbye that comes with a burial. Many families held memorials and built monuments in honor of the crew members. Each year, ceremonies are held to remember their loss. However, these efforts didn't ease the pain of not knowing what really happened to their loved ones. Over time, these families continued to search for answers, speaking with experts and pushing for more investigations, but the lack of clear explanations only added to their frustration. But while these changes have made sailing safer and helped prevent similar tragedies, they came too late for the families of the crew. These families still live with unresolved grief and unanswered questions. The story is one of deep loss and sorrow, not just for the families, but for the entire maritime community. Shipping practices and safety rules have been transformed, but the cost of these improvements was high, both emotionally and financially. The memory of those lost remains with us, and the tragic event that took their lives is always on people's minds. They often think back to that terrible night, wondering if anything could have prevented the disaster. Though the ship is gone, its story lives on as a strong reminder of the importance of safety and constant awareness. It also shows us how powerful and unpredictable nature can be, and why it's essential to respect the dangers of the sea. This tragedy deeply affected not just the families of the crew, but also the maritime community and the world. The ship will always stand as a symbol of nature's power and the need to respect the ocean's risks. In the 2010s, advances in technology allowed for deeper explorations of the lake where the ship went down. Tools like underwater robots have mapped the lake's bottom and examined the wreck. One surprising find was a dead zone around the wreck, where the water has no oxygen and no life can survive. Some theories suggest the bodies might be stuck within the wreckage, or that the lake's ecosystem has absorbed them. Despite all this research, the full details of what happened that night are still unclear. But this wasn't the hardest part. As the investigations continue, the families of the crew members honor their lost loved ones while still grappling with the fact that no bodies were ever found. For them, the grieving process has been difficult, especially since funerals were held without the physical presence of those they lost. Over the years, many groups like the U.S. Coast Guard and the National Transportation Safety Board have looked into what caused the sinking, but no one has been able to give a definite answer. This uncertainty has led to many theories, including the possibility of structural failure, human mistakes, or a fierce storm. The fascination with the tragedy and its lasting impact continues to draw attention. The tragedy also led to big changes in shipping regulations and safety rules designed to prevent similar disasters. The Great Lakes region has been forever shaped by this event, and the sinking is now woven into its history and identity. As we look deeper into this tragedy, we're reminded again and again of how powerful and mysterious Lake Superior is. The story is a reminder of the dangers of the sea and the strength of the human spirit in facing nature's greatest challenges. Was the sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald a result of a natural disaster, human error, or could it be something even more sinister? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.